Oh my goodness, I can't believe what I'm reading in this book. Oh, hi. I'm wondering if you've taken a look at this book, the PMBOK Guide, 7th edition. If you take a close look at it and you read through the summary, you realize that there's nothing entirely new. But if you're getting ready for the PMP exam, maybe you don't really believe me. So what we're going to do in the next few minutes, we're going to open the book. We're going to take a look at what exactly is, to borrow a phrase, under the hood. Let's take a look at the 7th edition and see what exactly you need to know as someone getting ready for the PMP exam. Really quick. This will not take more than 15 minutes. So if you've got the time, put it aside and let's dig into this book. All right. So the major things you need to know are not centered around the changes. I'm not going to bog you down with the changes. I'm just going to go straight into what exactly is new and of relevance. All right. So, part one, if you're taking the exam, you need to be aware of the breakdown of the book just to know that you've covered your bases. All right. So, we have an introduction and then we talk about a system for value delivery. That's all about projects, programs, and portfolios. If you know that mantra, you are good. Don't sweat it, don't fret it. So, we talk about creating value, organizational governance systems. Think about it. What is a system? A system is a collection of processes, procedures, and methods put in place to deliver something. At the end of the day, an organizational governance system is a system that is used for governance. What is governance? Governance is the framework within which authority is exercised. So we're talking about systems for exercising processes, procedures, rules, and guidelines in a firm. That's it. Functions associated with projects. Why don't we take a look at that really quick? So if you've got your book to hand, why don't we journey down there and take a look? So this is going into 2.3. At a really high level, one, providing oversight and coordination. You know that role. That's what project managers do, right? Number two, presenting objectives and feedback. That's a no-brainer, okay? And then number three, facilitating and support on the project. Number four, performing project work and contributing insights. Number five, applying expertise. Number six, providing business direction and insight. Number seven, providing resources and direction. And number eight, maintaining governance. People who fail a governance function approve and support recommendations made by the project team and monitor project progress in achieving desired outcomes. It's that simple. That's what it is. So, chapter two, as you're beginning to see, is not so scary after all. Now, 2.4 goes into what we call the project environment. This is a no-brainer. If you've read, its predecessor, this one right here, you know this mantra already. So taking a look at the 7th, taking a look at the 6th, they pretty much have the same dialogue going on as far as the environment in which projects operate. And that is what 2.4 is about. All right. So again, why don't you open it up? Let's go to 2.4 and talk about the environment. It's really the environment in which projects operate. So to understand this, just remember enterprise environmental factors. Now, it's not explicitly mentioned like that. In fact, here, if we open the relevant page, what it reads is factors internal to the organization can arise from the organization itself, a portfolio, a program, another project, or a combination of these. These include artifacts, practices, or internal knowledge. So what they've done here, they pretty much bundle the discussion about OPAs and EEFs into one header. Internal environment. Process assets are looked at as part of the internal environment. Governance, documentation, data assets, knowledge assets, security and safety, organizational culture, many things. Just think about it like this. We have the internal environment, things that could affect the project from internal, and we have the external environment. Now, for those of you used to the 6th edition Okay, what you need to remember is that the seventh is different. The seventh edition breaks down EEFs and OPAs into two broader buckets: internal factors, right? The internal environment and the external environment. So let's finish talking about the internal environment. We have infrastructure, information technology software, resource availability, employee capability. All those things could affect the project, right? But then we go into external environment. This is on page 18. And it says factors external to the organization can enhance, constrain, or have a neutral influence on project outcomes. Marketplace conditions, social and cultural influences, regulatory environment, commercial databases like standard cost estimating data, academic research, industry standards, financial considerations, and physical environment. So what they've done in the seventh edition, they've just taken EEFs, internal and external, and OPAs. They've bunched all of those together, and they're referring to these as the project environment. And under project environment, you got internal environment and external environment. I really wish they had kept them as EFs and OPAs, but just be prepared to find a change in that lingo eventually. It will get phased out. You won't really hear much talk about that except from oldies who took the old PMP exams and so on. All right, so that's 2.4. 2.5, product management considerations. Not only are projects undertaken to deliver services and results, but they are also undertaken to deliver products. And this talk about products is very important because majority of the projects that you see around you, they have something tangible associated with them. A product, like a deliverable, we could be referring to a set of documents. We could be referring to something that is not necessarily a vehicle or software or hardware, but it's a product of some sort. Okay, so when we talk about product, a product is an artifact that is produced, is quantifiable, and can be either an end item itself or a component system. And they've got a product life cycle. And what you need to know about this product life cycle, I'd like to break it down for you really quick, just in case you get questions about this. And to be quite honest, this is not new. Like I always say, this has been around for a long time. In fact, back in 2010, when I started training for the fourth edition, this was something I trained all the time. The difference between a product life cycle and a project life cycle. So when you talk about a product life cycle, you need to think about a product as being across a large expanse. Let's do that again like that. A large expanse of time. And if this is a product life cycle, what you need to remember is that a product life cycle consists or could consist of several projects. You could have project one. Let's say this was the very first project that authorized the product. And then you have a project to improve on that product and maybe ultimate releases and revamps and so on. And whether you're looking at a building or you're looking at hardware or software, this is what happens. You go through different projects for the sustenance of the product. And ultimately, let's say you get to PN, where N is the final number of projects you did for the product. You get to the end, it says, product management may initiate programs or projects at any point in the product lifecycle to create or enhance specific components. So that's the idea. Okay, let's say we created a deliverable and it's gone through different projects. It's going to get to the ultimate one, and that at that point could lead to folding up the entire product like a building. We talk about demolishing a building. So imagine a building. P1 is the initial construction. P2 is you do some refurbishments. P3, more refurbishments and technology updates. P4, maybe building another wing. And then PN, after so many years, it's going to get to the end of its life, right? That's the idea. Okay. And then we show that we could either bucketize these at a higher level as a program. So you could have programs at this higher level. Let's say all that's program one, and all this stuff here is program two. And the idea is we could authorize programs and projects for a product. And then it says, in some instances, a program can encompass the full life cycle of a product or service to manage the benefits and create value for the organization more directly. So again, that keyword is value, 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 value. All right. And that's one new thing that people taking the exam, just be aware of it. I'm not even asking you to open up your PMBOK Guide 7th edition. Just know, your buddy Phil told you the stuff that is in this document, know it at a high level. Okay. Don't go scrambling for the book just yet. Eventually do that when those who are taking the exam much further down. But for those folks taking the exam like 2021 mid to end, I don't really suggest it because PMI just changed the exam. They're not going to other changes anymore. So the things that you find in the 7th edition, they're not groundbreaking. And I don't say that to diminish them. I'm just saying that to get you comfortable to understand that a lot of project management that you read about, that you hear about, it's not breaking news. It's not new. It's not like, oh, Scrum, never heard that before. You see what I'm saying? It's not that. And by the way, Scrum is only mentioned once or twice in this. So don't start sweating. Be cool, be calm. Watch this again and again. I'm just going to make you comfortable. All right. So that's that. All right. The next thing that we talk about here is the project management principles. All right. And the project management principles are founded on the PMI Code of Ethics and Professional Conduct, first and foremost. It says principles can, but do not necessarily reflect morals. A code of ethics is related to morals. A code of ethics for a profession can be adopted by an individual or profession to establish expectations for moral conduct. And they tell you, go check out the PMI Code of Ethics. This has the responsibility, respect, fairness, and honesty configuration. And then it reads, the 12 principles of project management are aligned with the values identified in the PMI Code of Ethics. So you get the idea. All right, so we have project management principles, we have general management principles, and there's overlap of these. Okay. Now it reads, the principle labels are listed here without any specific weighting or order. So as we go through them, just know they don't have any weighting or order. Number one, be a diligent, respectful, and caring steward. That speaks for itself. What is stewardship? Stewardship is all about acting responsibly and being a custodian of what is entrusted to you. So if various resources have been entrusted to you, the idea is for you to take care of those resources. Okay. Those people who are stewards demonstrate a broad commitment to financial, social, and environmental impacts of the projects they support. A holistic view of stewardship considers financial, social, technical, and sustainable environmental awareness. Now, we talk about servant leadership in the Agile Practice Guide. Well, stewardship is one component of servant leadership, okay? One component of it. Let's go to the next one. The next one is create a collaborative project team environment. So just think about the Agile manifesto that says business people and developers must work together daily. Okay. But how can they work together daily if there is not a good environment? And it says, give the team the support they need. Create that environment, give them the support they need. This is echoing that. Okay. So project teams are made of individuals with diverse skills, T-shaped skills. Project teams that work collaboratively can accomplish a shared objective more effectively. So when we talk about the team environment, big one here overall is the environment of trust and a safe space. And that permeates agile, predictive, whatever the project you're working on. It reads, project teams work within organizational and professional cultures and guidelines, often establishing their own local culture. A collaborative project team environment facilitates alignment with other organizational cultures and guidelines, individual and team learning, and optimal contributions to deliver desired outcomes. So you get the idea. One of the big things talked about here is team agreements. You've already read this, page 50 in the Agile Practice Guide. Just understand that what they're talking about on page 29, it has a number of alternate names. You can call it team contract, social contract, team agreements, ground rules, and so on. So you got to understand that. And it says team agreements represent a set of behavioral parameters and working norms established by the project team and upheld through individual and project team commitment. Then it talks about organizational structures. Project teams use, tailor, and implement structures that help coordinate the individual effort associated with project work. Now, when we talk about these structures, got to understand roles and responsibilities, allocation of employees, formal committees, and standing meetings. All of that, we talk about organizational structures. But one thing I want you to remember in the world of Agile, which you'll be hearing a lot more frequently, you got to remember that in Agile world, it's a self-organizing team. It's not a team that is managed by centralized leadership. It has decentralized decision making and management overall. Okay. Still here in teams, there are many other things we talk about, how the team works, authority, accountability, and responsibility. And it says clarity on roles and responsibilities can improve team cultures. So a lot of what I'm reading here, honestly, it's not new. This has been in various publications from the PMI. All right, let's go to the next one. Stakeholders. Effectively engage with stakeholders. Again, it goes back to that business people and developers working together daily. It goes back to collaborating versus negotiating, right? Customer collaboration versus stakeholder or negotiation. You don't want to think about negotiating. You want to think about working with them and collaborating. And that takes you into the topic of engaging stakeholders. Why do we engage them? Because we're a team. They're part of the wider team. That's the idea. So it reads, stakeholders influence projects, performance, and outcomes. Project teams serve other stakeholders. You see how it said other stakeholders? Because the team members are stakeholders in and of themselves. So project teams serve other stakeholders by engaging with them. Stakeholder engagement proactively advances value delivery. That's the whole idea. The more we collaborate, the better it's going to be. So there are many things here that we could talk on and on about, but you kind of get the idea. I'll just mention a few. Outcomes, that's important. Not the output, but the outcomes. That's important. So it reads, stakeholders can affect many aspects of a project, including but not limited to outcomes by enabling or blocking work required for the desired outcomes. So they could stand in your way, right? Culture by establishing or influencing um, or even defining the level of character or engagement of the project team. Stakeholders are really powerful. And this is just calling your attention to that and saying, get them engaged, do what you need to do, manage stakeholder engagement. That's really what this is. Moving on, we've got focus on value. I could talk about this, no joke, for the next 1 hour nonstop, because when you talk about how PMI has evolved, going from this to this, when you talk about how they have evolved, you see that the language that PMI is using these days, I mean, before it used to be very, very deliverable, product focused. And I'm not saying the entire sixth was like that, because there's some nuggets in the sixth you need to be aware of on pages 30 and 33. But when you take a look at the seventh versus the sixth, what you're going to see is the language about benefits and value is a lot more accentuated. Okay. So when we talk about focusing on value, we're focusing on what we call net quantifiable benefits. That's value. Value is a net quantifiable amount of benefits that your customer, your stakeholder experiences. And it's important that we not only realize the project charter, but we need to, even before the project charter, ask the question, what are the benefits? What is the real value? Let me remind you about this again. This one, page 7 in the PMBOK Guide 6th edition, you need to really understand tangible versus intangible value. That is talked about a lot here as well. So in going through all of this, my friends, because I've taught this now for going to 10 hours, this new edition, what I can tell you is that a lot of what is in there is like them bringing to the surface what was in other publications, okay? The publications that came before this, they had a lot of this same dialogue, but it was hidden. It was buried. For example, I don't know if you've looked at page 7 in the 6th, page 30 and 33 in the 6th. There's so much stuff in there. All right. So when we talk about value, Value is the ultimate indicator of project success. Value can be realized throughout the project or at the end. Value and benefits that contribute to value can be defined in quantitative or qualitative terms. We could talk about tangible value and intangible value. A focus on outcomes instead of output allows project teams support the intended benefits that lead to value creation. Project teams evaluate progress and adapt to maximize the expected value. All right, let's go to our next one. Next one here. This is recognize, evaluate, and respond to systems interactions. This is about systems thinking. This is, again, something talked about in the 6th edition in chapter 2. And what it reads is recognize, evaluate, and respond to dynamic circumstances within the surrounding project in a holistic way to positively affect project performance. In other words, don't think about the individual items, think about the whole. You want to think about the entire thing, the whole thing, not just tiny little disjointed pieces, but think about the whole. That's what they're saying here. Think about everything together and how the project is affected by the system that it's in and how the project is a system in and of itself. That is what this is saying. All right. So some big takeaways just to help. The following skills support a systems view of the project: empathy with a business area, critical thinking with a big picture focus, challenging of assumptions and mental modes, seeking external review and advice, use of integrated methods, artifacts, and practices. So there's common understanding, use of modeling and scenarios to envision how systems dynamics may interact, and proactive management of the integration to help achieve business outcomes. So you're seeing that a lot of this stuff is just complementary. It's not like groundbreaking news new, but it's stuff you definitely want to pay attention to. All right, so that was on page 39. It then reads, recognizing, evaluating, and responding to systems interaction can lead to the following outcomes: early consideration of uncertainty and risk, ability to adjust assumptions, provision of ongoing information and insights that inform planning and delivery, clear communication of plans, decisions that benefit the organization as a whole, and more comprehensive and informed identification of risk. So, my friends, I know this whole topic of systems thinking, I know for some people it's new. They've never really heard about it before. But what I want to encourage you to do is just go through the bullets on page 39, if you must, at a high level, so that you can understand the benefits of systems thinking. When you're thinking in a systemic way, you are looking for opportunities that are beyond what would be right in front of you. You're looking for risk that you typically will not think of if you're just in tunnel vision. Think big picture, think wider, think interactivity. That is what they're saying here. Okay. So that's number 5. All right. We still got a little ways to go. I'm going to go a little bit quicker, pick up the pace here. All right. Next one is demonstrate leadership behaviors. And by demonstrating leadership behaviors, what they mean is be a leader through and through. It reads here, effective leadership draws from or combines elements of various styles of leadership. Documented styles range from autocratic, democratic, laissez-faire, directive, participative, assertive, supportive, and autocratic to consensus. Of all these, no single leadership style has proven to be the universally best or recommended approach. Instead, effective leadership is shown when it best fits a given situation. For example, in moments of chaos, directive action creates more clarity and momentum than collaborative problem solving. Think about it. And you see this same trend even when it comes to conflict resolution. Not every conflict resolution approach is the best. The best one is the one needed for the moment. That's really what this is. So leadership has a lot in common in that regard. Okay. There are a lot of examples. There's a lot of text on the pages that follow. But the bottom line is blend styles. I'm going to read the end. It says, by blending styles, continuing skill growth, and leveraging motivators, any project team member or stakeholder can motivate, influence, coach, and grow the project team, regardless of role or position. So, the really funny thing, I was training my students and I asked them the question, which leadership approach is the best leadership approach to use? Is it coaching? Is it autocratic, and questions like that. And at the end of the day, what folks chose was not the right answer. The right answer was the best leadership approach is the one that best fits the team for that project or best fits the individual. So just be aware of things like that. All right, let's move on to the next one. This is tailoring. Tailor based on context, understand the context of the project based on the tools, the methods, the techniques that you have. Take a look at the project and say, what do we need for the project out of all these things we've got? Do we have to use everything? No. We're going to tailor sensibly and professionally. So I'll just read it for you. It says, each project is unique. Project success is based on adapting to the unique context of the project to determine the most appropriate methods of producing the desired outcomes. So tailoring is something that you should do. So if you get questions about tailoring, you come into a project newly as a project manager, there's no method or framework being used, what should you do? Well, of course, one of the things to do after deciding on the framework is to tailor it. All right, next one here is quality. Build quality into processes and deliverables. What is quality? Fitness for use, conformance to requirements, customer satisfaction. That whole mantra about quality has definitely not changed from here to here. It's the same mantra. Quality is important. So just reading here on page 47, it says project quality entails satisfying stakeholder expectations and fulfilling project and product requirements. Quality focuses on meeting acceptance criteria for deliverables. It says quality may have different dimensions, and some of these dimensions: performance, conformity, reliability, resilience, satisfaction, uniformity, efficiency, sustainability. Many project teams measure quality using metrics and acceptance criteria based on requirements. So when you think about quality, fitness for use, conformance to requirements, customer satisfaction, those three things, let them be in the back of your mind. All right, number 9, navigate complexity. Complexity is at the heart of using an agile or change-driven approach. So here it says continually evaluate and navigate project complexity so that approaches and plans enable the project team to successfully navigate the project lifecycle. Complexity is the result of human behavior, systems interactions, uncertainty, and ambiguity. Complexity can emerge at any point during the project, and it can be introduced by events or conditions that affect value, scope, communication, stakeholder risk, and technological innovation. Project teams can stay vigilant in identifying elements of complexity and use a variety of methods to reduce the amount of impact of complexity. So the bottom line is this: have you taken a look at the Stacy model? I mean, it's mentioned in the 7th edition, but if you haven't, take a look at page 14 in the Agile Practice Guide. I want to call your attention to this. Okay, the Stacy complexity model, something like this. And in the model, you've got these zones. Okay, you've got getting into complicated, somewhere around here. You've got the predictive zone, and this is where you start getting into complex, and ultimately you're going to hit chaos or anarchy if you wish. And the idea is talking about technical approach to the project and talking about requirements on the y-axis. Are you far from certainty or close to certainty? If you are close to certainty, then the overarching idea is use a predictive approach. Okay, so if you're close to certainty in the requirements, close to certainty in technical direction, use predictive approach. If you are far from certainty, you're going to have to start thinking about using more agile. Okay, and that means instead of you just being here, so this is complicated. And there's a difference between complicated and complex. Okay, actually, if I was going to show you complicated versus complex, I would have to keep complicated all the way down here. So just know comp means complicated. But there's a difference between complicated and complex. What is the difference? Complicated means There's very high degrees of intricacies among the elements of the project. For example, if you're building a watch, that could be looked at as complicated. But when you talk about complex, complex means we cannot follow a set of instructions or a predictive approach. It means it's going to be more experimental. For example, driving from here to Kamloops, British Columbia. Do you even know where that is? Now, talk about driving there with a map. It's complex because the outcome and how you're going to do it, you don't know. The roads, you got no idea. And even if you have, things change on journeys such as that. And when we talk about going into chaos mode, well, an example is a project I worked on with 12 different systems, accounting systems, business rule systems, and they were trying to put all these systems into one. Now, imagine some of these systems, they had outputs of paper that had to be used to input to another system. Very, very complex. So when you talk about a complicated project, complicated, yeah, we can follow the rules. We're pretty close to understanding the requirements. We're pretty close still to understanding the technical detail. But when you talk about complex, it trumps complicated. And that's the idea. So if you go to the Agile Practice Guide, again, page 14, this is a concept that you really want to understand. It's called the Stacy. They call it the Stacy diagram or Stacy complexity model. Okay. Stacy diagram, Stacy complexity model. And you actually see this in the PMBOK guide, 7th edition as well. Unfortunately, you do not have an image of the Stacy diagram in the 7th edition, to my knowledge. But on page 14 of the Agile Practice Guide, this is very, very well done. Okay, it's called the Stacy Matrix. In the 7th edition, you want to look at page 270, I believe. 165, I beg your pardon, 165. So look at page 165 in the 7th edition, but look at page 14 in the Agile Practice Guide. Stacy diagram is a really good one to understand complexity, complicated, chaos, all that stuff, okay? All right, let's move back to our slide. So you kind of get the idea about the importance of navigating complexity. As a project manager, that's your job. You know, your job is to ask the question, how are we going to navigate this thing? All right, let's go ahead. Let's introduce some infusion of Agile. What makes things complicated? Again, human behavior, system behavior, uncertainty and ambiguity, technological innovation. Let's move on to the next one, risk. Optimize risk responses. Remember, risk could be positive. We call those opportunities, or risk could be negative. We call those threats. So the idea is risk responses should be appropriate, cost-effective, realistic as far as the project context, agreed to by stakeholders, and owned by a responsible person. That's the general idea. Project teams should also monitor not just individual project risk, but overall project risk. An overall project risk is the effect of uncertainty on the entire project as a whole. Overall risk arises from all sources of uncertainty, including individual risks, and represents the exposure of the stakeholders to the implications of variations in project outcome, both positive and negative. So the bottom line is this: don't just think about risks that can affect the task Bobby is doing tomorrow. Think about risks that can affect the entire project, that can bring the entire project to its knees. If you see a collection of individual project risks that could be such a monumental threat, we want to label those as an overall risk. So you want to think much higher level. You want to think aggregate in terms of those individual risks. So it says project team members engage with relevant stakeholders to understand their risk appetite and risk threshold. Risk appetite describes the degree of uncertainty an organization or individual is willing to accept in anticipation of a reward. So when we talk about risk appetite, a lot of times people get this mixed up. People think risk appetite means how big the risk that you want to take on is. No, that's not it. When you think about risk appetite, you have to think about opportunity. So you think about the opportunity that you're pursuing, but you think about the risk you're willing to take to pursue that opportunity. That is how we talk about appetite. How do you measure appetite in the general sense? It's how much food you're willing to eat, that you're looking to eat, right? To be full. Well, what opportunity is at stake and how much risk are you willing to take to pursue that particular opportunity? It has to be relative to something, all right? So if you put an opportunity on the table and there's no appetite to go after it, people are not really interested, then of course the risk appetite is low. But if there's an opportunity of a particular nature and people are really, really desperate to get that, then their appetite goes up. That's the overall idea. All right, let's talk about number 11, embrace adaptability and resiliency. Adaptability is all about change, right? Adaptability is the ability to respond to changing conditions. Resiliency is the ability to absorb impacts and to recover quickly from a setback or failure. A focus on outcomes rather than outputs facilitates adaptability. It says most projects encounter challenges or obstacles at some stage. The combined attributes of adaptability and resiliency in the project team's approach to a project help the team accommodate impacts and thrive. In other words, the ability to bounce back. A project rarely performs exactly as planned. Projects are influenced by internal and external factors that I read to you previously. New requirements, issues, stakeholder influences, among other factors which exist in a system of interactions. Some elements within a project may fail or fall short of expectations, requiring the project team to regroup, rethink, and plan. So the question is, how quickly can you regroup, rethink, and plan? And is the outcome going to be helpful to the company absorbing whatever shock could have been experienced? That is the question. So, how do we get better when it comes to adaptability and resiliency? Short feedback loops. That's 1, 2, continuous learning. 3, T-shaped skills. 4, regular inspect adapt mechanisms. 5, diverse project teams to capture a broad range of experiences. 6, open and transparent planning. 7, small scale prototyping for feedback, of course. 8, ability to leverage new ways of thinking and working. 9, process design that balances velocity of work and stability of requirements. Just remember, when it comes to velocity, we also think about capacity, right? 10, open organizational conversations. 11, diverse project teams with broad sets of skills, cultures, experience, coupled with SMEs, subject matter expertise in that required area. And 12, understanding from past learning of the same or similar endeavors. These are things that help you become more resilient and to be adaptable. In other words, to be agile. This is really the agile principle. Because when you talk about adaptability and resiliency, that is the business case for agile. All right. Number 13, the ability and willingness to anticipate multiple potential scenarios and prepare for multiple eventualities. So the idea is to be risk aware, risk conscious. Okay. Deferring decision making. Number 14, to the last possible moment. 15, management support, and 16, open-ended designs that balance speed and stability. So I know some folks will see, why do you want to defer decision making to the last possible moment? That's part of being agile, so that you understand all the chips on the table and you're able to respond with the best response based on all the information available to you at that particular time. That's the idea behind number 11. And number 12, enable change to achieve the envisioned future state. Again, you can say this is an agile-oriented principle. So it reads, prepare those impacted for the adoption and sustainment of new and different behaviors and processes required for the transition from the current state to the intended future state. Everything in this book is about going from the current state to the future state, whatever that might look like. The future state is where the future is, right? The benefits you're looking for, the advantages you're looking for, the revenues you're looking for, all that is in the future state. So this is enable change to get to that state. In other words, be agile so you can get to that state. That's what this is saying. Okay. Change in an organization can originate from internal sources, such as the need for new capability or in response to a performance gap. Change can also originate from external sources, such as technological advances, demographic changes, socioeconomic pressures. So what they're saying is a project can be authorized due to internal needs or external needs. That's really the summary of what they're saying. Overall, the dialogue goes into project team members and project managers can work with relevant stakeholders to address resistance, fatigue, and change absorption to increase the probability that the change will be adopted. It is also important to adapt the speed of change to the change appetite, cost, and ability of the stakeholders and the environment to assimilate change. Attempting to create too many changes in too short a time can lead to resistance because of change saturation, which is an interesting word for you to take note of. Recognizing and addressing the needs of stakeholders to embrace change throughout the project lifecycle helps to integrate the resulting change in the project work, making a successful outcome more likely. And you see a reference made to a really brilliant publication I would recommend. It's Managing Change in Organizations, a Practice Guide. It's one that I would recommend as well. And that was just the very first part, okay? This is going into the second part. And for those of you that have not even touched the book, this is enough. Trust me, this is enough. For 2021, this training is going to help you augment what you have here, okay? I still highly recommend that you don't confuse yourself. Some people are going to confuse themselves by wanting to read both. Don't do that. Let your trainer do the heavy lifting for you as far as the 7th edition is concerned, or you're just going to be going crazy round and round. Think about it. You've got the PMBOK guide, you've got the Agile Practice Guide, now you have the 7th edition. I mean, isn't that enough? That's 370 pages plus 756 pages. And you take a look at all of this information and you realize, oh my goodness, there is so much stuff to study. So you got to streamline it, okay? So don't get bent out of shape going to spend another, I don't know, however many more weeks you're going to spend reading this book. Don't do it. Don't do it. Watch this video. It's going to help you. All right. Now we're going into part 2. When I tell you I've got you covered, I've got you covered, because I know many of you didn't listen. I told you, don't open the book. People are beginning to open it and they're getting confused. So stick to this video. All right. If you must watch any other video, watch some of the other videos I have about the principles and some of the goals from here, but don't open the book. All right, let's go to part 2. All right, so in part 2, we've got an introduction, and this talks about the structure of the 7th edition, the relationship of PMBOK Guide and the standard for project management. So this is really the standard for project management that we just covered. Going into the PMBOK Guide itself, this is the guide now, okay? So the first part where we talk about the structure, we talk about performance domains, tailoring, models, methods, and artifacts, and then we go into the other pieces, all right? So what I would like to address first is really more of the performance domains, the models, methods, and artifacts. And of course, be aware that Standards Plus is an electronic repository of a lot more content, okay? A lot more content for you to go through in there. But what I would like to do now is, first of all, focus on the domains. Get the domains over and done with quick, because I want to give you a very high level breakdown of these domains, okay? So here we go. First domain is stakeholder. What do we mean by stakeholder? Everything to do with stakeholders. Understanding the identification of stakeholders, who they could be, understanding the importance of engaging them. So we talk about identify, understand them, analyze them, prioritize them, engage them, and monitor the stakeholder engagement. That's really it in a nutshell. And if you've read the 6th edition, there's no need to flog a dead horse. You get the idea. All right, let's move on to page 16. This talks about the team performance domain. Key things in the team performance domain is understanding that the following outcomes are what you desire: shared ownership, high-performing team, applicable leadership, and other interpersonal skills demonstrated by all team members. In other words, you want your team to be at its optimum. So understand the concept of centralized management and leadership, distributed management and leadership. There's nothing wrong in that. Okay. When it comes to distributed management and leadership, you also want to be thinking about impediment removal, diversion shield, being a servant leader and shielding the team from diversions, and encouraging development opportunities so the team can develop. In other words, it's code for people in the team all being servant leaders, at whatever level they're at. Okay. Common aspects of team development talked about in this one. The vision and objectives are very important, roles and responsibilities, project team operations, and this says facilitating project team communication, problem solving, the process of coming to consensus, all the things the team does in the inner core. All of this is important. Guidance of the team and growth. Guidance can be directed to the overall project team to keep everyone headed in the right direction. This is really language for servant leadership. All right, let's move on to the next one, because we're moving from here to development approach and life cycle. And there are a few things that I would say read up. Actually, let me focus before we jump into development approach. Let's solidify team. Okay, I want to do it quick, but I also want to do it thorough. So let me just break this down for you real quick. If you have your books to hand, follow me real quick to page 20. Okay, just want to show you the high level bullets. And that's one of the tricks you use for your 7th edition. All right. Don't start reading the entire laundry list. Don't do that. If you must look at it, like just glance at it, high level bullets, those are some of the things I'm looking at here. Okay. Just really, really super high level bullets. So if you look at page 20, it reads project team culture. When we talk about culture, we talk about keywords like transparency, integrity, page 21, respect, positive dialogue, positive discourse. You discuss with the team, have that positive dialogue. Don't get into rabbit holes of negativity and, not negative debate. Instead, positive dialogue, right? And discourse. That's what they're talking about. Support, courage, celebrating success. And then on page 22, we talk about high performing teams. What do? They openly communicate. They have a shared understanding, shared ownership, trust, collaboration. They are adaptable. They're resilient. The team is empowered, and recognition. Project teams who are recognized for the work they put in and the performance they achieve are more likely to continue to perform well. Okay, get the idea. Then you have another section on leadership skills. So this is going really into the nitty gritty of people, even a little bit beyond what is in the Agile Practice Guide. There's a lot of the touchy feely, squishy stuff, and I often say the soft stuff is the tough stuff. So this is the tough stuff that if people can really get this well, their projects will be good. So leadership skills, establishing and maintaining vision, critical thinking, motivation, interpersonal skills, and under this we have emotional intelligence, EI, and stuff. And we have components of emotional intelligence. So we have self-management, think before you act, build trust. I'm just going to show you this up here. So this has become a little bit longer than I intended, but I think it's going to add value to you nonetheless to understand the breakdown. Okay, so when you take a look at page 27, what you have here, a few components. So what is emotional intelligence? Bridling your emotions. So we have self-management, and under self-management, we have think before you act. Let's do that again. Think before you act. Self-management. Think before you act. And then we have build trust. It's the first one. The next one down here is social skills. And we have a couple of things. We have establish rapport, build effective teams, and manage attitude. Okay, and then we have self-awareness, how do you affect the team? How does the team affect you? And last but not least, down here in this quadrant, we have social awareness. So you can see the breakdown of the matrix, self at the top and social at the bottom. And here we have be empathetic, employ, active listening. All right. I really wanted you to get this piece because it's new. You don't, whenever you see a matrix in this publications by PMI, it's important that you have a double take and say, have I seen this before? All right. So this is called components of EI, components of emotional intelligence. And they keep talking about EI throughout that whole dialogue in Agile and predictive in PMI world. And that's why I decided to draw this out so that you really know what they're talking about. All right. So we've got EI really emphasized. And then the next thing they emphasize is decision making. Let's go back here. Next thing they emphasize is decision making and then conflict management. Look out for in the models, we have the Thomas Kilmann mode instrument. Look for my video on managing conflict. I go through the entire thing there. It's about a year or so old. All right. And then we go into tailoring leadership styles. So this is a huge, huge section. It's not as small as the first section, going to tailoring leadership styles and talk about interaction with other performance domains. All right. So now we can move on to 2.3. I was trying to get to 2.3 quick. 2.3 is development approach and life cycle performance domain. So here, this is where you need to understand a number of things. We have development, cadence, and life cycle relationship. So what is the delivery cadence? That is the first question. Is it going to be single delivery, multiple deliveries, periodic deliveries? And then the development approach. Is the development approach going to be predictive, hybrid, or adaptive? And if you take a look at one of the videos I recently shared, I actually shared a breakdown of page 35. There's a particular image on page 35. Again, when I see these images, I jump at them because you haven't seen this before in previous editions of the PMBOK guide, so it's good to pay attention to it. It's called development approaches. Okay, so again, I'll just do a very quick sketch for you to show you what this is. So if you're looking at page 35, you've got those double arrows that go like that. You've got predictive, you've got hybrid, and you've got adaptive. Let's just say agile. Okay, you've got that, and it's showing you that the degree of iterative and incremental is increasing. That's the idea. So the more to the right you go in that direction, you're adding more iterative and incremental thoughts and ideas. That's really what that is saying. And it goes into the hybrid approach, the adaptive approach. But if you've read the Agile Practice Guide, again, it's not something that you really need to, spend hours and hours and hours going over, which is why you're watching this video anyway, instead. All right, so you want to consider various things when you're selecting a development approach: the degree of innovation, requirement certainty, scope stability, ease of change, delivery options, risk, safety requirements, and regulations. These are all things you could consider. And then as far as the project is concerned, stakeholders, schedule constraints, funding availability, things like that. As far as the organization is concerned, organizational structure, culture, organizational capability, and project team size and location. All right. So those are just a few of the things that are under 2.3, and then they continue the discussion about life cycle and phase definitions. So we got feasibility, design, build, test, deploy, close as examples of these. Okay, great. So, my friends, you get the idea of what I was talking about. Taking a look at the graphic on the screen, I decided I would just share the coherent graphics. You can take a look at your um, seventh edition, but predictive, hybrid, and adaptive in that degree of scale. That's pretty much what I was talking about. So you got a question here. You're working on a project with low requirement uncertainty and a low technical uncertainty. Due to these low levels of uncertainty, which model should you select? What do you think? Low uncertainty. What is uncertainty? I'm going to help you out with this one. Uncertainty is really more about risk. All right. So the answer to this, the best answer to this is predictive because uncertainty is low. Okay. We got good level understanding of the technicalities and also the risk, right? Good ideas about the technical aspects, good ideas about the requirements is what I meant to say. Requirements and technicality. In other words, the Stacy complexity model, that's what this is talking about. Okay. And then going a step further, what I just mentioned in terms of factors influencing selection of development approaches, I talked about product, service, or result, nature of the deliverable. So this kind of goes into that, the degree of innovation. Okay, if you're following along, this is on page 39, degree of innovation, requirement certainty, scope stability, ease of change, delivery options, risk, and safety requirements. Okay, so I had another question as a follow-on from here. So the question is, which of the following factors typically does not influence the nature of project delivery method selected? So is it people and machines? Is it deliverable? Is it organization? Is it project? Because PMI mentioned those three overarching buckets. All right, if you need more time, take your time, hit the pause button if you're watching this after the fact, okay? And the answer to this is people and machines. The ones PMI gives in the 7th edition is deliverable, organization, and project. All right, here's another section that is something we just covered. So when you're selecting the life cycle, take a look at the project. Stakeholders, schedule constraints, and funding availability, that could also influence. Okay, so projects that use adaptive methods require significant stakeholder involvement throughout the process. If there's need to deliver something even early, if it's not a finished product or iterative or adaptive approach is beneficial. So understanding the schedule constraints, sometimes that will dictate whether to use an incremental approach. And last one that we talked about is the organizational structure, culture, organizational capability, project team size and location. These are all factors that could affect the choice of method. And I'm really stressing this because, again, it's something that is new. So for those of you that said, well, but I really feel nervous. PMI said the moment this book comes about, they're going to change the exam. I know. Trust me, I know. So the 7th is here. These are just things that you need to be familiar about. That's all. Here's another question for you. People are generally motivated by 3 factors. Which one is not a factor described by McClellan? So this has been on the exam for eons, but you should know this, all right? What do you think the answer is? 3, 2, and 1. Well, if you've not read McClellan's work, you probably don't know the answer is rewards, but rewards is the one that typically people are not motivated by. So that was just some trivia from the 7th to keep you going. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that. So when we talk about McClellan's, we've talked about team quite a lot. So this kind of thing is used for teams, all right? So achievement, affiliation, and power, that's McClellan's theory in a nutshell, okay? People who have a need for achievement, they prefer to work on tasks of moderate difficulty in which results are based on their efforts. When we talk about affiliation, people that have a need for affiliation prefer to spend time creating and maintaining social relationships. They enjoy being part of a group, just like many of us enjoy being part of PMI chapters. And we have the need for power. People who have a need for power prefer to work and place a high value on discipline. The downside to this motivational type is that group goals can become zero-sum in nature. That is, for one person to win, another must lose. However, this can be positively applied to help accomplish group goals and to help others in the group feel competent about their work. All right, so it's a little bit of a diversion there, but it was good stuff to talk about when it comes to understanding the team and so on. Now, to bring it back to what we're just talking about, when we talk about life cycle and phase definitions, because we're really on page 42, these are the ones that were talked about in the 7th edition and identified: feasibility, design, build, test, deploy, close. And if you watch my video where I talked about things that are already on the PMP exam, this was one of them. And understanding this lingo and what each of these means can help you, right? Feasibility, this phase determines if the business case is valid and if the organization has the capability to deliver the intended outcome. Design, planning, and analysis lead to the design of the project deliverable that will be developed. Build, that's construction of the deliverable with integrated quality assurance activities. Test, this is all about testing the deliverable, right? Final test, final quality review and inspection, that's what this is about. Next one is deploy project deliverables. This means put that deliverable into daily activities required for sustainment, benefit realization, and organizational change management. And lastly, closing out the project, that knowledge that you needed to harness, making sure you got that, archiving documents, document closure, administrative closure, things like that. So you get the idea. Okay, so before I took you into these finer focus slides, we're talking about development approach and life cycle. And all I was talking about here is that when we use the word life cycles, some of those terms that we just took a look at, they come into play. All right, so we talked about quite a lot. We pretty much talked about everything page by page under adaptive, hybrid, going into factors that affect your choice of life cycle on page 39, or your development approach, I should say, because life cycles are different. So factors that govern your development approach. And they got a sample of these life cycles: predictive and incremental. So those are there as well. But again, I don't believe you need to open up your book. This video should be enough for you. All right, then we go into the planning domain. And this is going to go really quick, because when you talk about the planning domain, you folks that have read the 6th edition, you already know about the 25. Is it 25? 225, 10, 12, 1, isn't that it? Yeah. So you already know about the 25. You know about, I'm going to go over them very quick. You understand about selecting a development approach. You understand about thinking really critically about the delivery. How are we going to deliver whatever we're building? Estimating, cost estimates, schedule estimates. They've got an image that I actually want to show you. It's something that is kind of new, and that is understanding the difference between precision and accuracy. So when we talk about accuracy, it means close to the intended target. If the intended target is the bullseye, then this first one, we can see it is right on the bullseye. That is accurate. But it's also precise. Why do we say it's precise? Because the values are all close together. You can see it's all close together. Okay. Now, if you take a look at this next one, you can see the values are all close together. It's precise, highly precise, but in terms of accuracy, it did not hit the bullseye. So it's low accuracy, high precision. Okay. If you take a look at the next one, it is closer to the bullseye. So we can say high accuracy, but in terms of the values being clustered together and close, it's low precision. And then the final one is just all over the place: low accuracy, low precision. So that is a new concept talked about in planning. And the idea is that when you're creating these estimates in your planning, you want to make sure that the estimates are high precision, high accuracy as much as possible. Okay. As you plan in an iterative fashion, your estimates are going to become more precise, more accurate. And that's what we're talking about. Okay, next here we talk about scheduling, mandatory dependencies, discretionary dependencies. This is something that you're bound to see throughout project management. Mandatory, discretionary, internal, external, this whole dialogue, it's a good one for you to know as someone getting ready for the exam. Also, there's an image that has come up again. So I should probably call your attention to it. It's on page 61 of the PMBOK Guide 7th edition. I want to show it to you just so that it sticks really well. It's called Release and Iteration Plan. So let me just show you what it looks like at a high level, okay? So at a high level, you got the product vision, and the product vision is all about understanding the release. Release 1, release 2, release 3, how are you going to release this product in chunks? Now, in every release, you have iterations. In the world of Scrum, we might just call those sprints. So you got various iterations, but in each iteration, what do you have? Each iteration consists of you working features, and inside those features are stories. And ultimately, when you break down a story, you could break it down into tasks, even though not every agile team likes to do that. But the bottom line is this: when you're working in agile, you got to understand everything from here, feature level, story level, iteration level, release level, all that stuff, like from there up, from the user story level up, that's value. All that stuff is value. Now, when you take a look at what is under that, these tasks, this is not value. This is really just talking about hours. Hours is not value. So what are we saying? You can use the term story points to address how you do everything from the user story up. Story points. You could quantify features in story points. If you wanted to, you could talk about story points delivered in a sprint and stuff like that. But when you talk about the task level, that is not value to the customer, okay? And that is one point that you should understand. We don't estimate stories in hours. We estimate stories and everything up in story points. Tasks, those are hours, okay? So you get the idea. It says, adaptive approaches often use time boxes. The work in each time box is based on a prioritized backlog. So I'll just say, read up about Scrum, and you'll do well with this section. All right, still in planning, we talk about budgeting. There's a different interpretation of that image in the PMBOK guide, where we see the budget and how the budget consists of the baseline and work package cost estimates, all that stuff. It's changed a little bit, but I don't want to inundate you with that. Not important for now. In planning, you got to communicate, you got to plan communications management, you got to plan procurement, you got to plan resources, you got to plan change, you got to plan which metrics to use, you got to plan alignment, you got to plan everything. And it talks about interactions with other performance domains, but that's that. The next one goes into project work domain. So here's some of the major things we talk about are balancing constraints, maintaining project team focus, project communications and engagement, managing physical resources, working with procurements. And that goes into the bid process and contracting. That's all under project work. Learning, like manage project knowledge, tacit knowledge, explicit knowledge. That's where all this stuff is talked about. Then we go into the delivery performance domain. The delivery performance domain, we talk about delivery of value. We talk about here scope, so requirements, WBS, definition of done, a little bit about the cost of quality and things like that. So, to be quite honest, there is nothing that you are missing if you don't open it up, because a lot of this stuff we've talked about. We talk about the cost of quality, internal failure cost, external failure cost of changes. A lot of dialogue here that I don't want to go any further into for now. Then we talk about measurement performance domain. The summary is, as a project manager, you're going to be involved in measuring stuff. But what are you measuring? Intelligence in measuring the right stuff. It says the measurement performance domain addresses activities and functions associated with assessing project performance and taking appropriate action to maintain acceptable performance. That's the summary. And it says measures are used for multiple reasons: evaluating performance, tracking the utilization of resources, demonstrating accountability, providing information to stakeholders, assessing whether deliverables are on track, focusing conversations about trade-offs, threats, opportunities, and options, and ensuring the project deliverables will meet customer acceptance criteria. It's all on page 94. That's the overall idea. All right, last but not least, we've got uncertainty. What is uncertainty? Uncertainty is what could affect the project team's options. In other words, risk. Okay. And of course, when you talk about risk, you can't talk about risk without understanding measurements. So, in closing, when it comes to these measurements in 2.7, this is where earned value is. This is where the definition of which metrics you're going to use, whether it's SPI, CPI, CVSV, all that stuff. But that goes straight into uncertainty, because in your studying measures, you get a better understanding of the metrics, and that helps you understand risk. So everything that you would measure, whether in an agile project, predictive project, your velocity, story points done, burn up chart, all of that stuff is going to help you with uncertainty. Going into uncertainty, I'll just tell you straight up, this is all about risk. We talk about ambiguity here. It says there are two categories of ambiguity: conceptual ambiguity and situational ambiguity. Let's talk about these real quick. Conceptual ambiguity, the lack of effective understanding, occurs when people use similar terms or arguments in different ways. For example, the statement, "The schedule was reported on track last week," is not clear. It isn't clear whether the schedule was on track last week or whether it was reported on last week. In addition, there could be some question as to what on track means. Ambiguity of this type can be reduced by formally establishing common rules and definitions of terms, so on and so forth. Situational ambiguity surfaces when more than one outcome is possible. Having multiple options to solve a problem is a form of situational ambiguity. Solutions for exploration of ambiguity include progressive elaboration, experiments, and prototypes. Then it goes into complexity, talks about systems-based, reframing, process-based as far as complexity is concerned. So you could talk about systems-based complexity, examples of working with complexity that entail reframing, diversity, and balance. It's a good read anyway, if one has the time. But again, I wouldn't spend time on it. Remember, the idea of this video is to give you the top of the waves and get you to the point where you're able to function for your exam. All right, so finally we have tailoring. I'm going to give you the top of the waves. Why tailor? Because projects are different. What to tailor? You tailor processes, procedures, guidelines, life cycles, engagement tools, methods, and artifacts. That's the summary. What is the tailoring process? So they have a recommendation for the tailoring process. And that recommendation is as follows. If you're reading along with me, here on page 137, let's read really quick. It reads, select initial development approach, tailor for the organization, then tailor for the project, and then implement ongoing improvement. That's it. That's the tailoring process. Select the initial approach, tailor for the organization, tailor for the project, implement ongoing improvement. And last but not least, we have tailoring the performance domains. Of course, You got to tailor how you plan. You got to tailor how you engage with the client, the customer, the stakeholders, so on and so forth. It's not rocket science. I'll just read the opener. It says, the work associated with each performance domain, the ones we just looked at, can be tailored based on the uniqueness for the project. That's the overarching idea. All right. And then when you get done with this, we go into the next section. And the next section is models, methods, and artifacts. Now, let me just be honest with you. The models, methods, and artifacts talked about, if you read all the multiplicity of ITTOs here, when you come across the stuff here, you need to understand a lot of what is here is talked about here. See? So don't overdo it. Okay. I have a video where I read out every single one of the tools and techniques in the 7th edition, which they call models, methods, and artifacts. So the ITTOs, basically I read out all of them. And my recommendation to you, again, is to not go down that route. Okay. This video is enough for you. It's enough. Okay. What I'm going to do real quick, I'm going to read out the image mapping of models. So I'm just going to read the models. Okay, situational leadership model so I'll kind of accentuate which ones I think you should focus on. Focus on this one, situational leadership model by Hersey and Blanchard. Okay, focus on that. So that's where we have directive. I've shown you this before, haven't I? Let me go there real quick and show it to you. So this model is the Hersey Blanchard model. Just look for my video on YouTube where I talk about this. Okay, I cover it in sufficient detail, but this is what they're talking about. By the way, they don't show you the image in the 7th edition, but the image is really helpful for you understanding what on earth they're talking about. So we have situational leadership. We have the Oscar model. Then we have communication models, cross-cultural communication, effectiveness of communication channels. Then we have motivation models, Husbert's hygiene factors, right? It says hygiene and motivation factors. Then we have theory X, Y, and Z. Know those, McGregor's theory of X and Y and Ouch's theory Z. Then we have change models. We have managing change in organizations. I have a video on this. The ADKAR model, John Cutter's 8-step process for leading change, and transition models, William Bridges' model. I have a video on that. So the summary of what I've said so far, situational leadership model, definitely that one. The effectiveness of communication channels, definitely that one. Theory X, Y, and Z. Managing change in organizations, PMI's own model. I call it the FPIMS model, FPIMS. I have a video on that somewhere. And then John Cutter's 8-step process for leading change. You can find this anywhere on, in the book and elsewhere. Stacy complexity model, in other words, Stacy matrix. Tuckman's ladder, for sure. And then other models like conflicts. I talk about Thomas Kilmann mode instrument, know that. And then understand what salience is. And of course, you have your good old process groups listed. That's it. That's it. Okay. I wouldn't overdo it. Don't do too much. Okay. Then the next thing we talk about is the methods. So under methods, this is where we have those real tools and techniques. There are a boatload of them, but I would just say if you go through page 182 and 183, you're going to see a list of them. I'm going to read them out for you just to make sure you got them down, okay? So we have alternatives analysis, assumptions and constraints analysis, benchmarking, business justification analysis. And here we have, business justification. We talk about payback period, IRR, internal rate of return, return on investment, net present value, which you should know, right? Cost benefit ratio, benefit cost ratio, same thing. Then we talk about check sheets, cost of quality, decision tree analysis, earned value analysis, expected monetary value, forecasting, influence diagram, life cycle assessment. That one is not in the 6th edition, talked about like this. Make or buy analysis, probability and impact matrix, process analysis, regression analysis, root cause analysis, sensitivity analysis, simulation, stakeholder analysis, SWOT analysis, trend analysis, value stream mapping, variance analysis, what if scenario analysis. All of those things that I just read, all of them, all of the things I just read, they're all here. You see that? They're all there with the exception of one, okay? And that is life cycle assessment. So let's see if we can read that real quick, if I can find it. So it says life cycle assessment. This assessment is a tool used to evaluate the total environmental impact of a product, process, or system. It includes all aspects of producing a project deliverable, from the origin of materials used in the deliverable to its distribution and ultimate disposal. So you've probably heard that before. You probably had life cycle costing along those lines, right? Somewhat along those lines, but not just cost. You might have also heard something along the lines of maybe product life cycle assessment, all that very similar, okay? All right, so we just got done reading page 182. Now we're gonna read page 183 as far as the tools, they're really tools and techniques, all right? So estimating methods, affinity grouping, um, affinity estimating pretty much. Let's read it so that you keep track of where I'm going. So it says, affinity grouping involves classifying items into similar categories or collections on the basis of their likeness. Common affinity groupings include t-shirt sizing and Fibonacci numbers. So let me just show you real quick, because I know some of you have not seen this before, and I know there might be questions. Okay, well, what does this look like? So let's rapidly talk about it. I want to show it to you real quick. So you hear a lot of agilists talking about t-shirt sizing when we're doing estimating. This is the overall idea here. You might also hear this being referred to as relative sizing. So taking a look at what's on the screen, what we do when we do affinity sizing is we have these user stories, right? Imagine you put these user stories up and we call it silent relative sizing because you don't really need to talk to anyone. It's not as rowdy as poker planning or, as collaborative as that. Affinity estimating has an advantage. It's fast, it's relatively easy to do. We label these things using t-shirt sizing. So imagine you taking a look at all of these stories and deciding what size they are. In other words, you have each team member deciding this is an extra small, this is a large, this is a medium. That's the idea. What is the advantage of t-shirt sizing? By using t-shirt sizing, you're going to abstract away from the numbers. And you're just thinking extra small, small, medium, large, stuff like that. So you place them approximately in the columns where it says, this was a medium, this was an extra small, work that you've done before. Therefore, everyone agrees that these are mediums or extra smalls. Then the team places cards for the new work where they feel it's appropriate. It's basically like a bubble sort. You're saying it's bigger than this one, it's smaller than this one. So you're thinking in terms of extra small, small, medium, large, extra large. Now, after we've done that and after we've placed a whole bunch of cards on the board, we then take a step back, we look at the board, and then we challenge. When we disagree with something, we say, you know what, I don't think so. This is small, or this is bigger. And you have a conversation. At the end of that conversation, the product owner can challenge because the product owner, while they're not doing the work, shouldn't get to vote. They should be able to say, you know what, this says it's large, but really it should be easy. Let's talk about it. So it's very collaborative when it gets down to the last stages. But at first, imagine everyone getting their cards and deciding this is a small, this is a large, this is, and then at the end of the day, coming back to it and deciding, okay, do we really all agree that this is an extra small? So it's a conversation and it's a good approach. And this is what they're highlighting. I think a lot of the value of understanding what they're talking about in the 7th edition you're going to have to see it. All right. So this is buried here in estimating. So you got affinity grouping, analogous estimating, function point. It says a function point is an estimate of the amount of business functionality in an information system. Function points are used to calculate a functional size measurement of a software system. Then we've got multi-point estimating, parametric estimating, relative estimating, single point estimating, story point estimating, wideband Delphi, which I talked about. It's pretty much your using your Fibonacci sequence and your cards. It's called wideband Delphi, but it's also really known as poker planning, or planning poker. They don't mention it here. Still along the lines of page 183, we have backlog refinement, bidder conference, change control board, daily stand-up, iteration review, iteration planning, kickoff, lessons learned, planning, project closeout, project review, release planning, retrospective, risk review, status, steering committee, impact mapping, modeling, net promoter score, prioritization schema, time box. And that's it. So I just read out really quickly for you all of the models and the methods. That was pretty quick. And the last one that we have here, which I will not attempt to do, is the artifacts. I'm just going to talk about the buckets of the artifacts: strategy artifacts, log and register artifacts, plan artifacts, hierarchy chart artifacts, baseline artifacts, visual data and information artifacts, report artifacts, agreements and contracts, and other artifacts. So not a bad one to just browse through for those people taking the exam far in the future. Okay, I have a number of videos out there. If you just search for Praizion PMBOK Guide 7th edition, you might be able to catch my first reaction to the 7th edition, which I call the boss party, the PMP boss party. And then you'll also be able to view other trainings that I've had for the 7th edition. I have a boatload of information out there, at least 10 hours of work on this. All right. So my friends, I hope all that I've covered today has helped you to be able to distinguish one from another, taking a look at the 6th, taking a look at the 7th, and deciding, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm not that intimidated by the 7th, and I feel I've got a good handle on the 6th. Therefore, I'm just going to read the Agile Practice Guide and away I go. That needs to be your disposition. All right. So thank you very much for joining me. If you have any questions, do let me know in the chat. Okay. And if you're getting ready for your exam, you need to be in one of my training sessions. So I advise you to check out our website. It's called Praizion.com. That's Praizion.com. And when you get to Praizion.com, you'll be able to check out the training that I've got going. I've got all sorts of training sessions going. We have training sessions that you can get on demand. We've got some hybrid recorded sessions. We've got the Power Review Live that happens regularly. We've got the Agile Practice Guide Power Review. We've got the hybrid immersion. There are so many opportunities for you to get into a session live with me, and it's value all the way. Like we got one coming up next week. Just go on down to Praizion.com, check around for what we have coming up or what we already have as far as the courses that you can get on demand. But I really want you to be calm and cool regarding your exam. Don't get crazy now, okay? You've already read this one. You've read the Agile Practice Guide. This one, I don't want you to go off and begin spending another 2 weeks just studying it. It's not value. You already have a good idea of the Agile Practice Guide and the PMBOK Guide. You've been for a good course, a robust course. That's enough. All right, don't go crazy reading the 7th. This video is even more than enough. I've gone above and beyond. Okay, take it from me. I've been doing this for a very long time. The changes, when they come, are not going to be so monumental that you need to be scrambling for the hills. Okay, thank you very much. I wish you all the very best and look forward to talking to you soon. Bye for now.